All right, so check this out. We got this Nissan that's knocked down by 2,000. We got this Nissan that's knocked down by 3,000. This dealership right here is moving with the market. Even on a lot of their new inventory right here, I go on their website and I can see that they've reduced just about every one of their vehicles that they have listed for sale. But most car dealerships are not moving with the market like this dealership is. So why is it that even in this market, when we're seeing days supply of inventory just go through the roof at a lot of these brands, 170 days supply on dealer lots for this truck. Nissan is one of them, Ford, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram, but still a lot of these dealerships refuse to lower their prices. Well, throughout this video, I'm going to give you the reasons why some of these dealerships are deciding not to lower their prices, and in a lot of cases, sometimes they just can't. So really, the number one reason that we're seeing across this market right now, where you're seeing that dealerships keep their prices ridiculously high and don't move off their MSRPs, is because of greed, right? So we see a lot of these dealerships who are still living in the past. They're living 6 months ago, they're living 12 months ago, where they remember where they can sell a lot of these vehicles. They could have gotten markups, $5,000, $10,000 in a lot of cases off a lot of these highly desirable vehicles. And they still, these sales managers, a lot of them were created over the last 3-4 years when all these times were crazy. And they're still wanting to hold on to that. And they're wanting to get these vehicles to these customers that are willing to pay that. But all those customers that were going to buy, they had to buy it right now, and it doesn't matter supply and demand. Who cares? I'm just going to buy it. Just tell me what my payment is. I'm going to buy it for that price. And those dealerships were able to sell those vehicles to those customers and make tons and tons and tons and tons of money on those customers. Well, all that's gone, and now you can find vehicles that you don't have to pay markups for. You can buy them for under MSRP. But those dealerships that are still around and wanting to capitalize on the supply and the demand game that no longer exists, but they still keep that mentality because they think that they can still get the same amount out of a lot of these vehicles that they could 6 months ago, they could 12 months ago. And I'm actually walking on a Kia dealership right now, and I don't see one right here at the moment, but a Kia Telluride would be, oh, we got some up here. So a Kia Telluride would actually be the poster child for a scenario like this, where you have this situation where, okay, yeah, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, you had all these consumers that they were crazy for these Kia Tellurides, where they would pay $10,000 over on all of these SUVs. I mean, they were hot cars. People wanted to buy them, and now you can go and you can find them at just about any Kia dealership that you go to, and you no longer have to pay those market adjustments. But those Kia dealers, some of them, still think that they can demand that price for these Kia Tellurides, and those are ones that they're holding on to the past, and it's very difficult for these dealers that are in that situation to be like, you know what, nah, maybe the market's not as good as it once was, because you don't want to think about the market in that way. You don't want to think, okay, now we need to get back to the volume game. We can still make $10,000 extra. We can still sell all these add-ons. We can still get our full price, and we don't have to negotiate off of these cars. And I know there's a lot of dealerships, because I see it down in my comments, and I see you guys going to these dealerships and trying to negotiate off of these cars, and these dealers won't move. But what you're also saying is that, okay, but they're full of these. F-150 is a good example, where there's a lot of Ford dealers that aren't moving off the price of F-150s. And they're 2024 F-150s. I'm actually walking to a Ford dealership right now. I'm going to show you that they're going to have some 2024 trucks sitting over there. I haven't even been there yet today, and I know there's a problem with Ford, and there's a problem with F-150s, and still, even now, with them having over 100-day supply of inventory, there's still a lot of these Ford dealers that aren't wanting to move off their 2024 trucks. And we're now in the midst of 2025 with Ford having stacks of F-150s that are 2024 sitting around, and dealers will still not move. And this is really what I want to talk about too, where there's a situation where some of these smaller dealers, I go back to Ford, if it's a mom and pop kind of dealer, if they don't have multiple stores, if they're not a massive volume dealer, in some situations it's going to be very difficult for them to move off these F-150s, the 2024s specifically, in a massive way, if they might just be unable to, because they can't stomach the loss that's going to go along with it. And I'll show you, here's a Ford, this is a 2025, but we'll show this F-150, $85,000 is what they're charging. And now it's a Platinum, it's one of the higher level trims. But if you get to a situation where you have a Ford dealer, like a mom and pop Ford dealer, that have all these F-150s sitting around, if they go and they have to reduce the price by 15-20% across the board just to get customers into it, that's not a loss that these Ford dealers can take. Now, a lot of these big volume dealers, yeah, maybe they can stomach it. Maybe they can make it up somewhere else. But if you have it where, I mean, for this Ford dealer to move all of these trucks right here, they're going to have to take $10,000-$15,000 off of it. Well, if it's a small Ford dealer, they're not going to be able to do that. And they have floor plans that they have to satisfy. They have these big, nice buildings that they have to pay for. All of this stuff costs money, and they still have to have a certain amount of money where they have to pay. Let's look at another one of these F-150s. This one right here is a 2024, just like I was saying earlier, and $66,000 on this thing. All right, so check it out. Here's your F-150 invoice price on this is $62,434. And if you scroll down here, you see F-150s, some of the vehicles that have the worst day supply of inventory on the market. You see right here, 170 days supply on dealer lots for this truck. But you don't see any discounts or anything that are actually advertised. And that's another thing about it, is if you're going to look for cars, look for a truck like this. And okay, there's a full line of F-150s. This is a 2024. We should have some 2025s that have come into the system already. A lot of times dealers don't advertise their actual discounts, even if they have them. So maybe it looks like to you that dealers are refusing to come off the prices, but maybe you're just not asking. That could be another scenario in this where, okay, I'll walk inside on that F-150 and just go talk to a salesperson, go poke them for a little bit, let them know that I'm a serious buyer, and they might come off the price 10, 20%, just like that. Maybe not 20%, but 10, 15% on an F-150 right now. You probably could get that on a 2024, but you're going to have to do some work. I know a lot of you don't want to go negotiate with a dealership. That's worse than going to the dentist. I get it. But in a lot of cases, they're not going to just run out and grab you and say, hey, this is a 2024 F-150. This is not F-150, that's not what I'm saying, but this truck is a 2024, and please buy it. We'll take 15% off right now. Please just buy it. That's not going to be the case. I mean, you see the situation with a bunch of these Ford Broncos right here, where it's so bad at Ford that they have actually stopped a lot of the production of these Broncos because they're just not selling. And here we go. This one's, yep, another 2024, $55,000. But then again, you see no discounts, but I can almost guarantee at this dealership, I don't see any add-ons, which is a good thing, but I can almost guarantee at this dealership that if you go in the doors and you consider yourself a serious buyer, and then they consider you a serious buyer, then you're going to be able to get at least 10% off of one of these Broncos, just because they're having such a hard time actually moving these things. But let's get to a situation where, okay, a dealership, they might refuse to lower the prices, but they might refuse to because they have to. And when I'm talking about this, it's more about small used car dealers. I'm a car dealer myself. And small used car dealers can actually get themselves into a lot of trouble. See, most used car dealers, they don't actually own their cars. They don't buy them outright. Now, I do. I pay cash for everything that we buy. We don't have debt. My wife and I, we don't like debt. So that's one thing that we've always done. And I think that's why we've been as successful as we have, because we never had to pay anyone else to borrow money to actually get our inventory. But that's not the case for a lot of these dealers. So in this situation where we have a market that's downtrending, especially on the used car space, well, you can get to where some of these used car dealers are upside down. And when they get upside down on their inventory, they can only lower it but so much. So remember, they had to borrow money on all of these cars that they are putting on their lot. And a lot of these cars right here are all used cars. Now, this is a franchise dealer, so they're not going to be that same situation. But when you get to where these used car dealers borrow all this money on this inventory that they have, and then, okay, the prices drop by 10, 15, 20%, and used cars can actually do that over the course of the year as we have ebbs and flows of how the market goes, and tax time, there's peaks and valleys. Right after tax time, there's this mini crash that happens on a wholesale level, but used car dealers can pay way too much for a car when demand is high, think of during tax time, and then they can get stuck with it when sales are very low. You think middle of summer or end of the year, sales are the slowest that they're going to be all year round during that time, and when these car dealers get stuck with these cars, they have them longer than about 60 days, well then they have floor plan interest that comes due, and they have to pay a certain percentage of what they borrowed. And as they keep the car longer, obviously their costs go up. It continues to cost them more money. So it can be a situation where the market is going down, their cost is going up. I would use both hands if I wasn't holding a camera, but there's a crisscross moment. And that's where they actually can owe more money on the car than the car is worth, or they can actually sell it for. And in those cases, they can't lower the price down to what a customer will actually pay for it, because then they would have to owe their floor plan company, their line of credit, the difference. And in a lot of cases, these dealerships, these car dealers that are on borrowed time, on borrowed money, they don't have the money to begin with. A lot of these car dealers, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They only have money, they can only buy more cars when available credit comes available to them. And the way that happens is when they sell cars. So when seasonality happens to them and times get slower, well, money can get really tight for a lot of these car dealers. I see it all the time when I'm going through to these auctions throughout the year. During tax time, dealers are everywhere. I see car dealers, they're paying crazy amounts of money. You have to cram in beside someone else just to have space to be in front of the car or at the lane, because there's so many car dealers. And then at the end of the year, like around Christmas time, New Year's, when sales are very slow, well, it's like a ghost town at a lot of these auctions. So I see this happen throughout the year, where I know when car dealers have money, when they're selling cars, and when they don't have money is when they're not selling cars at the end of the year. So when we get to that crisscross kind of point and they don't have the money to pay the difference, well, that's the time when they're tapped out. They can't lower it any more than that. If they have to come up with the difference and they don't have it, then these floor plan companies can actually decrease the amount of available credit that these car dealers have. And if that happens, they lose the availability to be able to buy more cars. And if it gets to a really, really bad situation, well, the floor plan company, the line of credit, can just call all of it and then take their line of credit away from them. And in that case, these car dealerships, what happens is, well, if you don't have any credit, they don't have any cash. So if they don't have any credit also, well, they can't buy any more cars. If they can't buy any cars, they can't make any money. And if they can't make any money, well, what's the point of being in business? So this is a situation where these car dealers can actually go out of business because they don't have the money to be able to buy their inventory, and then they don't have the credit to be able to buy their inventory. So saying all that just to say is, some of these car dealerships, especially the small used car dealerships, if it looks like they're not lowering their prices and you go in there to negotiate and their prices are crazy high and you can't get them to move off of it, it might be a situation where they literally can't move off the prices because they owe so much on their floor plans anyway. So now, you as a car buyer, what should you do with this information? Well, if you want to be able to find a car that a car dealer is going to move off of, then you really have to shop around. So there's a Toyota dealership right behind me. So my recommendation would be, and what I actually did myself when we were going to negotiate for a car for my wife, is that just know what you want to pay on the car before you even walk into the dealership. We went and negotiated for a van. I knew that 10% off of MSRP was a good deal on the van that we were looking at. And I went in and I sat down and said, look, I'm gonna pay 10% off at MSRP and no add-ons, nothing else on top of that. And if you give me the price for that, then I will buy it. I will literally write you a check right now or I will leave and go to the next Honda dealership that's down the road, and I'll go buy a van from them. And if they don't do it, then I'll go to the next one. I even gave the name of the dealerships that I was going to go to right after there. Our negotiation process took it's probably somewhere around 10 minutes. That's all it is. I got real numbers right in the beginning. I got to put in my offer. They got very close to it on the second pencil, and then on the third pencil, we got it done. And it took a very short amount of time. I know that it seems like it's a disaster to go into a car dealership and negotiate. It seems like they have all the power. I know there's a lot of information go around on a lot of other YouTube channels saying, okay, you need to call around all these. You don't have to do that. That's a lot of work. If you know what you want to pay, now there's going to be some research that goes into this before you actually go to the dealership. But if you have the information you need before you go to the dealership, you know what a good deal is on the vehicle that you're looking at, you know what you're willing to pay, and then you let them know that you're a serious buyer. That's very important. I feel like when you're calling, when you're emailing, it's very difficult to get the message across to the dealership that you're actually a serious buyer. And that's why I think actually going into the dealership and also being willing to leave and go to 2 or 3 different dealerships around the area. Yeah, it's going to take you a little bit more time to actually drive around, but I feel like it's going to take you more time to call and try to actually get real numbers, because you don't look like a real serious buyer to the dealership. So I feel like the amount of time that you're going to put into it with actually going to the dealership is going to be roughly the same, if not less. Like I said, I went into a dealership, negotiation took 10 minutes. By the time we started the test drive until the time that we had agreed on a deal, all that time was about 30 minutes total. That's all it took me to be able to get that deal. And you can do it too, and it's easy. You don't have to pay anybody to do it. You can be able to figure it out. But this is the exact way to combat a dealership that's going to refuse to lower their prices. You be a real buyer, you let them know that you're a real buyer, and you know what you're going to pay, you offer them that. If they refuse to lower their price to what you want it, who cares? Go to the next one and do the same thing, and then eventually you're going to find a dealership that's a good dealership that will work with you and is going to lower their price. But at the end of the day, market has changed. You don't have to pay market add-ons. You don't have to pay over MSRP for, I would say, 99.99999% of vehicles that are out there right now. You can find a dealership that's going to actually work with you, get you a deal at MSRP or less, and I would say on most vehicles it's going to be under MSRP at this moment. But make sure you do your research before you go, and you can avoid a lot of these dealerships that are actually trying to gouge you.